when people ask me how close I am to losing it, I think this is a pretty good representation right here. As you guys would see on TikTok, I was actually about to go grab lunch. Actually, it's a gloomy day, but today I had a little bit of time and I was going to record a video, but for some reason the Lambo is actually not starting, and I'm not sure. I mean, the battery symbol shows up, but all the lights turn on. And I mean, I did turn on the car literally the other day, so I'm not sure exactly what's going on, if it's just the battery or we have a more serious issue. But it is pretty bad timing, to say the least. Another issue in this situation is the fact that I have almost no idea where the jump starter is. I believe we've used it since everything got rearranged in the garage, but I'm not 100% sure. And I also cannot see it anywhere out in the open, unfortunately. Just found this in the Mustang after looking all over the garage. So let's see if this is even charged enough to put on the car. Finally got it on. Fortunately, it's fully charged. I believe I actually charged it last time we used it. Let's give it a try. I'm thinking whether it's worth the risk taking the car, but I think I will. I'll just take the jump starter with me in case something goes wrong, and at least I'll have my friend with me as well. But you know, it's an interesting situation and a risky one, but I do want to record the vlog. I came over here to unplug everything, and then I realized that the entire time it was actually on off. There goes nothing. All of it started when I was 17. At that time, I either would have to drive a minivan, which was, I believe, like from the mid-90s, like a Mercury Villager, I believe it was called, or I had to drive, like, I think it was like a 91 maybe Honda Accord. And yeah, so it was what it was. I was really into cars, and I wasn't really feeling either one of them, but at this time I wasn't even really that interested in getting a license, actually. So I got my permit, I believe, when I was 16, and then I didn't get my license until a couple of days before my permit was actually about to expire. So I think initially I tried to get it like a month before, so there'd be enough wiggle room there. And the day I went to the DMV and had my appointment, I believe something had happened at the DMV, so there was like cops surrounding the area and whatnot, and long story short, my appointment did not take place, and then I had to reschedule and was able to get my license maybe, you know, like several days before my permit actually expired. So that was that. So I got that, and then before I got my license, I had convinced my parents to get me an old Lexus because they didn't want me in a coupe. So I was like, you know, there's not that many sedans I actually like, and obviously I don't want to go crazy, so we were only looking at, you know, like a few $1,000s for this first car. And long story short, we found this 92 Lexus ES300 in, I believe it was like around San Fran, don't remember exactly, but it was in that San Fran area. Found the Lexus, we ended up taking it home. I think it was only on its like second or third owner, and you know, I believe it probably had like 160,000 miles or whatever, which probably would be a lot, but considering this is a Lexus at the end of the day, and this is, you know, pretty much right after Toyota had taken over, the car could obviously go for a long time. So we got the car, I ended up driving it. You know, next thing you know, I'm going to college, first year in college. They don't allow us to have cars because there's nowhere to park the cars, and we're living in dorms, obviously. So we're in dorms, don't have a car. First year's over, I'm moving into an apartment now, since I think dorms are only allowed for freshmen anyways, and they're not a good place to be, really. I mean, they're really expensive. They're more expensive than an apartment, and obviously you have very little space. So long story short, move into an apartment, and before the first year is about to end, I am trying to convince my parents to get an Audi A4, which, you know, all of us could drive. It's not necessarily just for me, but it would be primarily for me to get to school and, you know, come back and whatnot. And long story short, works out. Damn, I didn't expect it to start raining, or I probably wouldn't have brought the Lambo. But regardless, long story short, we're looking at sedans again. They don't want me to be in a coupe, and so if I was going to get in a coupe, I believe at this time I was looking at like early 2000s or 90s Mustangs or Camaros. And long story short, we get an Audi A4 at the end because I'm looking at sedans, not sure what to get. I don't think my parents are gonna get me a Benz or a BMW, and, you know, from what I recall, they were both a bit more expensive than an old Audi A4 would have been, or Audi in general. So long story short, we get this Audi A4, and I'm driving it, and immediately, I think in the first week, my dad actually takes it to my college to pick me up, and I get to drive it back home. And unfortunately, on the way to my college, he realizes the check engine light ends up turning on, and we're just like, oh damn. And at this time, we don't know exactly what we signed up for. Obviously, German cars cannot be that reliable. And long story short, for pretty much like the first year of ownership, I think it probably spends like maybe 3 or so months with me, and it spends about around 8 months, I believe, in the shop or something along those lines. It was like a very long time, and most of the time we actually owned the car. During that first year, it was in the shop rather than being with us. So I was basically taking the Lexus to school because I didn't have the Audi, unfortunately. Eventually, the car actually got repaired to the point where it was running and there was no check engine light. I think it took about a year, and after that, the check engine light never came back on. But, you know, we were still hesitant of what could occur, and for that reason, we ended up getting something else I thought was cool, which was a Nissan 300ZX. I thought the car was really cool. It was an old coupe, obviously, Targa top, so on and so forth. And, you know, having that car would mean I would finally have my first sports car and stuff. And the color was like navy, and I thought it was pretty cool. And we ended up copying it around where my college was actually, and it was an NA version. Because obviously twin turbo would have been more expensive and something that, you know, just wouldn't be reasonable for the time. So we ended up getting this Nissan at some point. I'm not sure how far along it was into the Audi's ownership, but we were hesitant, so we just got the car and I started driving that, and I think my dad was driving the Audi at that point, and that's pretty much how everything was. And the Nissan started having issues with the battery and whatnot, and long story short, we decided to have it looked at. Family friend looked at the car and looked underneath it and said that, you know, there's actually plenty of issues with it, or, you know, going to happen to the car. And he was like, you know, unless you really want to keep this car, you probably should get rid of it before it really starts breaking. And long story short, we're like, damn, had to go search for another car. That's when I got the blue Mustang, which I have to this day. It was somewhat modified, but it looked nothing like what it does now. Mechanically, pretty much the same as what it was back then, but we ended up getting that. It's pretty smooth.
I just want another blunt, and shawty she calling, I know baby what you want. I got in my section, look at my direction. She at IG thought all she want is impressions. I got
So we ended up getting the Mustang because of what we heard about the Nissan maybe not lasting very long, and it was a 90, I think it was a 92 300ZX, so it was fairly old, and this was back in 2016, 2017. Pretty sure it was 2016 because I got the Mustang in February of 2017. So yeah, that was that. So we ended up getting the Mustang. I don't know how far we drove to get the Mustang, but it was pretty cool. Obviously, like I said, it was somewhat modded already, but it wasn't anything what it looks like now. And yeah, so we went and got that, and then I believe a couple of days after that, or maybe a week or so, we ended up selling the Audi and the Nissan. Mustang was pretty good to us. The only issue was I think we needed the brakes to get changed at some point, and it was impossible to get the wheels like locks off on the rear side. And long story short, it ended up costing like about $1,000 or upwards of $1,000. The lock had to be broken off and whatnot, and then obviously the brakes got replaced and everything, so everything ended up costing like around $1,000, which obviously is not a good way to spend money. But outside of that, it treated us pretty well. When I ended up taking it to Carolina because I had to go to law school, and I needed a car, so it was a question about whether I would get a car out there or I would just take the Mustang. And long story short, we ended up shipping out the Mustang out there, which is actually where I did a lot of the mods in the parking lot of my apartment complex. The main issue the Mustang had, which it continues to have actually, is the battery. The battery's been changed several times. It died in Carolina plenty of times. Or not plenty of times, but a handful of times, just from sitting. Not very long either. It would sit, but it would be like so freezing out there. It is what it is. I love the car. That's probably, if somebody asked me what car I would not want to give up, it probably would be the Mustang. It has so much sentimental value to me, especially considering it went to Carolina with me. It got shipped there, it got shipped back from my externship days, and then it got shipped to Carolina again. So I believe it's been back and forth on 2 occasions. If I recall correctly, I took it on a road trip to Tennessee. Oh, look at that 300ZX. I can't wait to get another 300ZX. I've been looking at some actually, but that's the story for another day. I guess this school just came out, which is kind of interesting considering it's fairly early right now. But I did share that story. And I was passing by the school last time when the cops flashed their lights at me, so I don't know if this is good luck or bad luck, but this time I obviously have the camera, so that would make the experience more interesting. I definitely don't want cops to acknowledge my car in any way. I'm actually playing it pretty cool, just sitting here. And it's a black car, so I think it blends in fairly well. It's not like people are that likely to notice it sitting in traffic unless you just happen to look, and it's not very loud either. So when it's just sitting there, like, you don't really notice or anything. So I don't know, cool stuff, I guess. I am thinking about what other cars. I mean, so I ended up, after I became a lawyer, I ended up getting a C63 AMG several months into working. Probably not the greatest idea in the world, but I wanted to do it. I thought about getting a Lambo, but ended up not doing so because of how much it would cost in case something went wrong, and I just didn't have the funds considering I had just started working. So if something broke, then it was kind of said and done for me. There was no fixing the car at that point, because I just didn't have money like that. So I ended up getting the C63 instead of a Lambo. And so that person reacted. So I ended up getting the C63. I wasn't sure when the Lambo day would come, but you know, it eventually did come. And yeah, for a second I thought that was a cop pulling out, but fortunately it was not a cop. But yeah, so I got the C63. I mean, I shot videos of how I was considering getting a Lambo, and if I did, it would have been like a Gnardo back then as well. So it's kind of interesting how things came full circle in the long term. I ended up getting rid of that car, and that's when the Lambo came in. So that brings us more so to current day. Traded the C63 in. I pretty much got exactly what I paid for it, outside of, you know, like the taxes and all that. But you know, pretty much the base price of what I paid for the car is exactly what I got paid for the trade-in. Could have sold it for more as a private seller, but I decided, why waste the time? I'll just let the dealer handle it, and I'll just trade it in, get the Lambo, bring it home. So then I got the Lambo, and then after that I didn't have a daily driver, which is something I had in mind when I got the Lambo. When I was contemplating whether I want to give up the C63 to get the Lambo, or should I maybe just keep the C63, hold off a couple months, then get the Lambo, rather than doing a trade-in. I would have a little more money saved up, and I would just get the Lambo instead, and I would keep the C63 and the Mustang. I ended up deciding that I was just gonna go for the Lambo. It was black on black, exactly what I would like. You know, the interior wasn't black with the red trim or red stitching like I would like, but you know, it was good enough considering the exterior of the car made me happy enough to get it. So I was just like, all right, I think I'll go for it, and then I did. So I already pre-planned that, you know, in the situation that I did end up trading the C63, I would need to get a daily at some point, and what I would do is I would just go get like maybe a cheap Benz. And I was thinking, like, you know, I could see myself getting a sedan Benz, something a little older. I wasn't thinking about a C55. I was actually thinking something a bit older, maybe early 2000s or the late 90s or something in that era, maybe like an E-Class or something. But long story short, ended up getting the C55 that I found online. I feel like the dude behind me was taking a photo, but I'm not sure. I just happened to look in the rear view mirror, and like he had a phone in his hand. But so yeah, I got the C55 because I just saw it just randomly online actually, and I was like, this car's pretty sick. The main thing that really caught my eye was the fact that it was an AMG, and even though I was not really thinking about getting an AMG, I thought it would be cool to get one to replace, you know, the C63. And getting a C55, thought, like, it seemed like it was a pretty cool idea, just because the C55, if you guys know, was the older quote-unquote C63. Finally got home, and then I realized that I forgot that there was a freaking drink back here, since I rarely have drinks in here, and it clearly splattered a little. I don't know if I got on my jacket, but I wouldn't be surprised considering my hand was probably in this region while I was driving. So that's just fantastic.